Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to cover education savings plans. A good friend of mine is expecting her first child in the next month or so, and she asked me, what should I be doing today to save for my child's education 18 years from now? So let's cover that in today's video. And of course, when we talk about education savings plans, we're not just talking about college or university. We're also talking about apprentices, vocational schools. There are lots of good opportunities for children when they turn 18 to pursue a career that can support themselves. But let's be honest, the student loan debt crisis is occurring in our nation's universities. Currently, the debt is around 1.59 trillion. I remember it went over 1 trillion about when I graduated from school. Luckily, I went to a state university. I only graduated with about 38,000 and I was able to pay that off in about 5 years. However, there are lots of students graduating from college right now and they're not so lucky. And graduating from undergrad or graduate school, 6 figures in debt, you're at a serious disadvantage from your peers going forward in life. And as a parent, you really only have 3 options. If option 1, you say the child is responsible for paying for their own education, then you really don't have a say in whether or not they pursue an education. If a child at age 18 says, college is too expensive, I can't afford it, I don't want to take on the debt to go to college, then guess what? They're not going. So if you value education, then this leads to option 2, where they take out maybe some loans, but you take out additional loans to help pay for your child's college. This is a bad plan as an adult, as a parent, taking on debts at not a favorable interest rate to pay for your child's education. So this leads to the third option where, as a parent, you should be saving and investing today in order to pay for your child's education 16, 17, 18 years from now. And the government has codified into the law 2 different options for you. There is the 529 and then the Coverdell Education Savings Account, sometimes called ESA, sometimes called an Education IRA. I don't want to call it an IRA because that's confusing. It is not a retirement account. It is a savings account. So let's call it what it is, ESA. And first, let's cover what is the same about both of these accounts. Well, you contribute after-tax dollars. What does that mean? That means you earn an income, you pay your federal income tax, you pay your state income tax. Any money you have left over, that's your discretionary money. You can use that money to invest in either a 529 or an ESA. When you do that, when you put it in an account, whatever you're invested in the account, it'll grow tax-free, and then when you withdraw it in the future, you can make withdrawals and not pay any taxes on what you earned in that account. Additionally, you can roll these accounts into other children. So if for whatever reason your first child gets a scholarship or doesn't want to go to school, you can roll over these accounts for other beneficiaries. Alright, so now let's cover the differences. The first one is who manages the funds. Well, 529s are state operated, meaning that every state operates its own 529 plan. So whatever state you're a resident in, you need to investigate, for my state, what is the 529 plan? And with this comes limitations on options. Potentially with your 529 plan, you're going to get only a couple options to select from. Or worse, you have no control at all. You just have to say, the state is in charge of investing my money for my child's education. It is what it is. With an ESA, like an IRA, you set this up with a private bank. If you're looking for a recommendation on my channel, I always talk about and recommend either Vanguard, Charles Schwab, or Fidelity. They all have no account minimums, no hidden fees. And once you put the money in the account, in the ESA, you can invest in whatever you want. If you want to do index funds, you can do index funds. If you want to put it in gold, you can put it in gold. If you want to do REITs, you can do REITs. You have complete control over how you invest for your child's education in an ESA account. Can you deduct contributions to an ESA or a 529? For an ESA, definitely not. However, for a 529, because it's run and operated by the state, there are numerous states that allow you to deduct contributions, maybe up to a certain amount, from your state income tax. So definitely whatever state you reside in, there could be tax savings for you if you participate in their state's 529 plan. How much can you contribute? For an ESA, it's very simple. It's just $2,000 per year. It's been at that limit for a while, so I'm thinking in the near future they might increase that contribution cap, but for this year, 2020, it's $2,000. For a state, 529, it varies widely, and let's just cover that real quickly. These are the states with the highest aggregate limits, meaning that if you're a state resident of California participating in California's 529 plan, you can contribute a total of up to $529,000 into your child's 529 account. So $529,000 over 18 years, that's $29,000 a year. Hopefully that should get the job done. And this isn't even what the account is growing to accumulate to. This is just your contribution aggregate limit over your child's lifespan. And even the states with the lowest aggregate limits, Georgia and Mississippi, are the smallest at $235,000. $235,000 over 18 years is still $13,000 a year. So I feel like the aggregate limits for the 529s are more than generous. Now, who can contribute to these accounts? For an ESA, it's $2,000 per child, not $2,000 per contributor. So the mom and the dad can't both contribute $2,000. It caps $2,000 a year per child. So if you have multiple children, you can have multiple accounts, $2,000 per child. For a 529, this is really strange, but anyone can contribute to the aggregate limit. So if grandma, Uncle Joe, your next door neighbor, whoever wants to contribute to your child's 529 education plan, they can do so. Now, is there a limitation on contributions if you make more than a certain income? If you're familiar with the rules of a Roth IRA, if you make more than a certain amount of money, you can't contribute to a Roth IRA. Same is true with an ESA. If you make more than $110,000 a year, then you're not actually eligible to put money into your child's ESA account that year. It's $220 if married and filing jointly. For a 529, there actually is no income restriction on who can contribute. However, once again, definitely check with your individual state. In these accounts, what can the money be used for? For an ESA, it's just college related. That can also include, once again, maybe an apprenticeship or a trade school, vocational college. However, for a 529, there's no restrictions. You can use it for all of those things, same as an ESA, but you can also use it for K-12 education. Why would you do this? Well, for people who know their child might be going to a private high school or maybe even a private elementary school, then a 529 is very beneficial because you can start saving as soon as the child is born. Everybody in the family can contribute, and then when it's time to start paying the bill, maybe for a middle school or a high school, you can actually do that with a 529 plan, not with an ESA. When does my child have to use this money? There's more limitations on ESAs. For an ESA, you actually have to stop contributing to the account once the child turns 18, and the money in the account has to be used for education purposes by age 30 of the beneficiary. Now, once again, if you have more than one child, you can always roll over the money to another child, a younger child. For a 529, there's no time limit and there's no age restriction. Once again, check with your state, but if the money in this account just keeps growing and growing, this benefit, this cash can be used at any age. What is the penalty for not using the money in the account? Let's say you just want to take it out and spend it on something else not education related. Well, this is actually the same. If you take the money out, you're going to have to pay ordinary income tax on it plus a 10% penalty. This is a terrible idea because if you had just put this money in a normal taxable brokerage account held at long term, you'd be paying long-term capital gains rate. It's about 15%. So taking money out and not using it for education purposes, this would be a terrible idea. Definitely don't do this. So let's wrap it up. And what are the pros and cons of a 529? Well, the pros of a 529 is you can contribute a lot of money. In states like New York or California, $500,000. There's also no income limitation. It doesn't matter how wealthy you are. So 529s are excellent for legacy families, wealthy families who want their kids to go to the best private schools and then maybe go to Harvard or Yale someday. You can also get state income tax deductions depending on your state. The money, once again, can be used for K-12 education, and there's no age limitations. So if you want to go back to grad school or get a PhD in your 30s or 40s, you can still use the money in your 529 account. What are the cons? You don't control the funds that you're invested in. For that reason alone, I don't personally think I will ever use a 529. For the pros, it doesn't really make sense for me. I mean, I'm not even married, I don't have kids, but just thinking about it, the fact that you do not control the funds means you're most likely going to be put in a target date fund. I looked into a couple states. This is exactly what they're doing. I personally do not recommend or support target date funds. What this means is if your child is going to come of age, turn 18, for example, in the year 2040, it would default robo-advise you to be in stocks a certain percentage, and then as you get closer to that target date, it switches from stocks to bonds. And worse, it might be holding cash in the fund. So in my opinion, there's no reason with 18 years to maturity date to have any of your money in bonds, but target date funds all do this. What do I recommend? I recommend a simple low-cost index fund tracking, for example, the S&P 500. We'll talk more about that in a second, but if you're rich enough, for a 529, it might not matter. If the aggregate contribution limit is over $500,000 in some states, then if you're only getting over the long run a 5 or 6% return, you might not care. Now for an ESA, the pros and the cons are really just flipped. The cons is the income limitation. If you're married and you make more than $220,000 a year, then you can't contribute to an ESA that year. There obviously won't be any state deductions because the states don't care if you have an ESA. You have to stop contributing when your child turns 18, and you must use the money before the child turns 30. And the biggest con, you can only contribute $2,000 per year. What are the pros? You can control what you invest in. So what do I recommend? Well, I would recommend you just do a S&P 500 index fund. If you open an ESA with either Vanguard, Fidelity, or Schwab, you can invest in these mutual funds, VFIAX, FXAIX, SWPPX. If you prefer using ETFs, I made a video talking about the difference between mutual funds and ETFs, but these are the ETF equivalents. They perform the same. And why do I recommend a simple, low-cost S&P 500 index fund? It's because they're great. Over a 20-year investing time period, you can expect to earn about 9.8% a year. Yes, some years it'll be up 30%, some years it'll be down 30%, but if you just buy and hold over the long run, you can expect to earn about 9.8% a year. So hypothetically, if you set up an ESA for your child and you started contributing the max $2,000 a year for 18 years, if it grew at 9.8%, then when your child turns 18, you could expect to have roughly $100,000. Now, is $100,000 honestly going to be enough? And I don't know. College expenses keep growing at 3 to 5% a year. They seem unstoppable. So where will the future of our education system, higher education system, be in 18, 20 years? I don't think 100,000 is going to be enough. I definitely think that Congress has to increase this from 2,000. Maybe they can make the contribution cap 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. That would definitely help with the compound interest and make this number more manageable. And there you have it, guys. We covered the difference between 529s and ESAs. There actually is a third option for saving for your child's education. I'm going to make a completely separate video for that because this one's running kind of long. So definitely the next video on my channel, I will discuss that. Check that out if you're interested. Okay guys, if you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up so the algorithm knows it's good. In addition, consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. We talk about finance and investing issues on this channel. And if you have any comments or questions, leave me one down below. I love hearing from you guys. I'll try and help if I can. And until the next video, take care.